Sorry, it said arrested 19 July 2024. So that's his second arrest was 19 July 2024. So that's how long he's been in. So whatever the time frame is from then till now is what he is. So what, July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 10 months. So from the 19th of July till now, so like 9 months, somewhere around there.
Yeah, so, and then while he's in there, he's not even getting paid. Plus, they
No,
broke his
actually,
bones.
he
right?
should be getting paid. So if he is AWOL, right, they can stop his pay, right? And as soon as they arrested him, well, sorry, they can't arrest him for being AWOL. As soon as he went on, so you're AWOL, you're still getting paid, right? You hit that desertion charge. Once you hit the desertion charge, then they can stop your pay, right? But once they go arrest you, right, and they bring you and you're arrested, now what they should be doing is starting your pay back up from the time you were arrested. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay, yeah. And then, so just to verify his injuries, I mean, he's got some fractures, and they had to do a bunch of surgery back to back. Can you clarify?
Okay, so for his injuries, shit, I
Was
don't
that all
remember.
from the cell?
Yeah, I don't remember
Was
all
that
his
all from the cell extraction?
specific injuries. I don't remember all of them, but I know he had to have like a shoulder surgery, and that's like the specific one I remember. I know there was like a knee thing, um, but yeah, I don't exactly remember those. But he did get some injuries where he had to have surgery, and he had to had a convalescent leave for those surgeries. So yeah, I would have to go back to the podcast to actually verify those.
Yeah, too bad we can't actually have him on before the trial, but maybe after all said and done, he can, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. If he's cleared of all charges from the trial, like there's no doubt in my mind that we'll have him back on the podcast and we'll be able to have him on. And then I don't see an issue. Maybe after everything's said and done, we can get him on a X Spaces and actually have him on there as well.
And so this court martial that he's going through, is it? You said it's a couple days at least, and at the end of that, they'll make a decision whether to set him once and for all, locked up
Well,
forever.
so from my understanding, the court martial itself is actually scheduled for the whole week. So they're anticipating it being from Monday to Friday of this week. That's why I'm in North Carolina. We're headed down to South Carolina. They should be having the court martial in South Carolina starting the 23rd, which is Monday at 09 Joint Base Charleston, which is where me and Scott are actually headed there. So we'll be there Sunday, and we'll hopefully be at the court martial Monday, and we're gonna watch 2 to 3 days of it. Um, it's scheduled for all week, but hopefully it doesn't go longer than that because I have to get back to El Paso. But yeah, but that's what we're up here for.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome. It's a big group tonight, and some people want to come visit his court martial, as civilians. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be pretty cool if they're in and around that area. If you like to mention it, like right out of the gate.
Well, yeah, as long as they can get on post, like the military base, the court martial, from my understanding, is open to the public. So if they're allowed to get on post for whatever reason, they should be able to go to that court martial and watch it. It's going to be very interesting. From my understanding, Lance is like super, like he believes he's going to win this. Like the evidence that he has, I mean, just off the side, he has 300 plus recordings um, of his chain of command. So if you're familiar with the first court martial, all the charges were basically like made up charges, and he had recordings, in which basically those recordings basically saved him from being guilty within those charges. So this time around, my understanding, he has over 300 recordings, um, that the charges that they made up, he can actually prove that he didn't say the things they said he did, or whatever it may be. So it'll be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I find it interesting that he beat his first case. He won it, right? But then they threw him back in pretrial confinement to try him a second time. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, man. So basically, they sent him right back to the same unit he was involved in, prior. So he went. This unit made a bunch of charges. They falsified a bunch of charges. They sent him through a court martial. Smartly on his behalf, he recorded a bunch of conversations and stuff. So all the charges that they made up, he had an opportunity to show those recordings within court, and he won his charges. So not guilty on all accounts. And then after the court martial, instead of sending him to like another post, like sending him away somewhere else, they sent him back to the same post, right? And he ended up working in a building where like Colonel Roach, right, was part of his first court martial, was involved in, and he was actually working in that building. So Lance was like not comfortable going into that building and seeing some of the same individuals that were, within that first court martial. So, he tried to stay away. He was uncomfortable going in there. He was actually scared for his life. He was scared to like what he would do if he seen these individuals, because they falsified charges and tried to get him locked up, for a long time, falsifying charges. He had a child that was born while he was in pretrial confinement the first time. They wouldn't let him out to see his the birth of his child. So he has a lot of PTSD involvement in this. So, but yeah, because they sent him to a building, to the same unit where individuals were involved in his first court martial, all that PTSD, he didn't want to go in there and work. So that was part of it. So his first sergeant, I believe he got a new first sergeant, and his first sergeant, I believe it was like First Sergeant Hunt or something. And the first sergeant was like, "Okay, cool, man. Like, just do your job. Stay in the parking lot, do what you got to do." And so that was fine. Lance was good with that. He was doing everything he needed to get done. The first sergeant was fine with that, but Colonel Churchill was like the new colonel, right? And he had an issue with that. So he basically put a stop to that. And so Colonel Churchill put a stop to it, and then basically wanted Lance to go back into the building, go back to work, and not get any special treatment. And let me mind you, like Lance has like different like mental health issues, so actual diagnoses of like all the stuff that he's been through. So like whatever PTSD issues, he's been diagnosed with certain things. So he has all these issues that they were trying to accommodate for him, so he wouldn't have to involve himself with these individuals. But Colonel Churchill put an end to that, right? And then what Colonel Churchill ended up doing was he brought Lance in to talk to him, and I believe, don't quote me on this, I might be wrong in this part, but he gave him like some sort of negative thing, which was like an LOR or something, like a letter of a counseling or a letter of reprimand. Like he gave him one of those things, right? Like a negative, like counseling, basically. And then he brought him in again, and then he told him like, "Hey, I'm giving you these orders to like go back to work, right?" And and to back it up a little bit, the first sergeant actually gave him different work hours, right? So he decreased his work hours a little bit. He's trying to help him out. And Colonel Churchill took his work hours away and was like, "No, you're doing this," right? And then he said, "You have to go back to work." And he said, you can't record anybody at work no more." So, and Lance, from his first involvement with his first court martial, he's like, his mind frame, from my understanding, is if I can't record people at work and they want to falsify charges, right, which is what they did the first time, they can do that. And when you have, two people that are saying this one person did this, that person's going to be guilty, right? And the only thing that saved Lance the first time were those recordings. Well, I didn't do that because if you listen to this recording, it shows I didn't do it, right? So Colonel Churchill basically said you can't record anybody. You have to go back to work, and you have to do your work hours. Can't be those work hours. You have to do these work hours, like which is I guess the normal work hours. Um, so he decided at that point, like, hey, I'm not fucking playing this game no more. I'm done. I quit. I'm not gonna go in, and I'm not gonna do this. So he just stopped going to work, right? Because he actually feared for his life. And here's the thing about Lance, he sent several emails to post, I'm not joking, like post wide emails. Like if you were private, you got his email. If you were a commander, you got his email because he sent it to everybody on the post, basically saying what I said. Like, I'm fearing my life. Like, I can't go in. Like, I'm worried about going into work. They're going to falsify charge. Like, I mean, I'm talking like 30 something pages of him writing an email to describe everything that's going on. So he actually feared for his life going in, and so he didn't want to go to work no more. So he's kept in good contact with his first sergeant, letting him know, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is why. He sent emails out to everybody, and their mother, basically, like letting them know what's going on. And so he stayed home. And then he was obviously put on AWOL status, which is what you're supposed to do. And then after a certain amount of time went by, they put him on what is that shit called, Scott? After AWOL, desertion. So he went on. So once you go on desertion status, right? You're filed for desertion. Now, what can happen after that is they can go out and arrest you. You're on desertion. They know where you're at. They can go out and arrest you and bring you back, right? And so that's what they did. They put him on desertion status. They went out. They arrested him. They brought him back into the military. And then the thing about this, though, is they arrested him for desertion, but they didn't give him a charge for desertion. His charge is for, I believe, actually, it might be desertion. I have to go back and look, but I know they dropped it down the AWOL. They might have put it back, or they might not have messed with it. I'd have to look at it. But anyways, that's kind of the summary of what happened with Lance, and I can look up real quick to see if it was a desertion charge or not. Just gotta try and find it here. No, it's absent without leave, so it's basically AWOL. So they arrested him under desertion. They dropped the desertion charge and gave him AWOL. So, I mean, in the summary, that's kind of what was going on.
Yeah, I want to know. It sounds like a conspiracy, actually. If
Yeah.
he won his first court martial, why did they put him back in the same unit that tried charging him again? It's like, why would you you just beat the lion's den, but now they're throwing you back into the lion's den from which you came. And then the recording of the phone. I mean, you can still have your phone. They can't order you not to have your phone, right?
Yeah, I mean, it might be a post policy, which is like, not to record people, on post, which is understandable, but like still you have the state like law, which is a one consent state, so he's allowed to do that. But again, it might just be part of the post policy. But like as a leader, like if you understand his situation and you understand that if this individual did not record those conversations, he would be like imprisoned because his chain of command falsified charges. Like you should be able to understand, like, okay, I get it, man, like whatever, you know what I mean? And if ultimately like you're doing nothing wrong as a leader, you shouldn't care if you're being like recorded or not. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. Is it the same exact people that are charging him in this case, or
Well,
compared to the first one?
Yeah, so like that's where it gets kind of tricky. So I believe the first one was like Colonel Roach, and they did a left seat, right seat, so it went from like Colonel Roach to Colonel Churchill, right, and then it went from Colonel Vasquez to whatever his new commander was. He had a couple different ones, like fill-ins and shit. But as good as I do, like, because you served in the military as well, like those individuals are doing left seat, right seats. Okay, so they're briefing on the situation. Um,
Yep.
yeah, so they're gonna give their story, their outline, and Lance actually made an effort to make sure he requested time with those new individuals that came in to let them like hear his side and hey, this, I don't know if you know my story or not, but this is what happened. And it seemed like those individuals didn't want to hear him out because they were already briefed from their counterparts, right? Which is whatever, like, but as a new leader, like you're coming into a situation, you have no idea what's going on, so you should gather as much information as you can and make your decision. But at the same time, like you should be understanding, and you shouldn't lie and try and falsify charges, or like make stuff up or tweak things here or there, like, and that's the weird thing, and I hope it comes out in this court martial. But as a new leader coming into this situation, like you shouldn't be doing like horrible things like the last situation, like falsifying charges or saying you did something when you didn't do something. Like it just doesn't. But they're doing that stuff because they didn't know he has 300 plus recordings of them, right? Like there's a situation where, um, if I remember correctly, like the first sergeant or something says I don't know if the first sergeant or the commander, but basically they said they kicked an officer. Like I don't know, they kicked him out, like, but basically removed an officer from an office, right? And then had that office space set up for Lance so he can go in that office and be in that office and basically, um, work there without anybody, messing with him, right? But Lance has a recording that basically says that, I think it was the first sergeant, that don't quote me, it was either first sergeant or commander, but they basically said that they were requesting to have that office cleared out for him, but the request was denied or something, right? But they told like the judge or the lawyer or whoever asked the question was like, "Oh yeah, we cleared him out of office." Right? But in the reality, they didn't clear him out of office. They just requested it, which was denied. So you see what I mean? Those are like little white lies that make Lance look like, he's doing bad things, but and make them look like they're not, which is the exact opposite. So it's stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that is interesting how the new colonel came in and the old colonel gave him a brief about Lance and said, "This guy we got to lock up again. He's a bad guy. Let's get Lance." And then the new colonel's like, "Okay, let's do it." Like, what's in it for him? Is it just is it all just corrupt on that base? Like Cannon Air Force Base is just like a very corrupt place in New Mexico, and it's just that's just how it is. Like some bases, like Fort Hood, I guess, they just don't have their shit together, and there's a lot of corrupt individuals and leaders. They just like fester with corruption in certain areas.
What, I don't know, man, and honestly, like I'm a sergeant first class. I got kicked out 17 years, 10 months of service honorably. Like I never done anything wrong in my military career until this COVID thing hit. And I still haven't done anything wrong. They just said I did. But what I will tell you with that experience and that knowledge is I've had several leaderships that were under the influence that they wanted soldiers, right, that have done some bad things in their lives. They're like, "Oh yeah, like when I deploy, like I want to make sure like I have soldiers that done some dirt and are able to do some dirt. So when I go down range, like when I tell them to do something, like they just do it and get it done with so there's no issues." Like, you know what I mean? Like other than having a soldier that's never done anything wrong in their lives and is not like sketchy about like, maybe pulling the trigger on, the enemy or something, right? Like, oh, he's done some stuff, so he's more, reliable to pull the trigger when I tell him to pull the trigger, right? Rather than someone that's never done anything wrong in their whole lives, that would well, I don't know if I should fucking shoot this person that's trying to kill me, right? Which is, crazy, um, but that's what they said. I'd rather have someone that's done some dirt than someone that hasn't done some dirt. Um, and I'm from the Army. Lance is in the Air Force, obviously. But if you transfer that over into a leadership mentality of wanting people that's done dirt and done dirty shit to get the job done, that's kind of the situation you see yourself in with Lance. Like those leaders, if you put that context into Lance's situation, those leaders would fit that profile, like individuals that done dirt and are now in leadership positions and will still do dirt to get the job done no matter what the hell it is. And in this case, it was soldier didn't want to take the vaccine, so we need to get this guy out of here because he doesn't want to follow rules and regulations and orders, lawful orders, even though they weren't. But he doesn't want to follow lawful orders, and we can't allow this individual to do this because it's a cancer. And I understand cancer, right? It's a cancer and it'll spread in the unit. And, I'm a drill sergeant, platoon sergeant. I think I was a pretty good leader. But a cancer in your unit is basically somebody that is doing things that, is negative towards, the morale, the health, the welfare, the readiness of the unit. And you have to either fix that individual or you have to get rid of that individual because say you're deploying and he doesn't want to deploy and he's doing everything that he can do not to deploy and he's trying to get other people on board with him. That's a cancer you don't want to spread because then you won't be, ready to do what you got to do, as far as getting ready to deploy or in combat or whatever. And that I believe that's how they seen Lance. So, with those two things combined, they were ready to get rid of this individual by any means necessary, and that's what they did, or at least attempting to do still.
Yeah, I think it comes down to we don't want to let this guy, you know, win. He didn't take the COVID vaccine, and now he's defying all these other auxiliary orders we're giving him, and we gotta basically make his life a living hell to set an example. Like this is what happens if you don't follow our orders. You end up like Lance Castle, and we're just gonna keep on trying you until we convict you eventually on something. Like eventually you're gonna slip up, and because they can make any type of small little rule on you, and if you break it, then boom, we can just levy like dozens and dozens of you know minor charges against you, and hopefully the judge is on our side, and then look what we did to Lance Castle. We put him away for good. You want that to happen to you? You listen to us no matter what.
Right. And I read through a lot of the judge's documentation that I got on the side, but and Lance kind of took offense to some of the way like the judge, it's Judge Royer who is in this next court martial, which I don't know this individual at all, but um, it seems like the judge is leaving out a lot of like a lot of the what's actually going on and kind of like being very vague about everything. So, which I kind of understand both sides and both situations as a leader. Any leader should understand both sides, right, to make a good like decision on what's going on. So Lance is upset because the judge is leaving out a lot of technical stuff, right? And I'm not going to get in too far into detail, but the judge is being very vague. Like this leader said this, Lance said this, so maybe this happened. But like the way the judge is perceiving it, it seems like the judge is giving more credit to the leadership than he is Lance. Like Lance is a troubled kid. The leadership is doing everything they can to support him and help him. But it just seems like Lance is not doing, it because he just doesn't want to, right? So as I was reading through these documents, that's kind of what I got. But at the same time, I'm not gonna think the judge is picking one side or the other because he's still a judge, right? And he has to hear out both sides. and then put those together and make a decision. So if he was to take like one side or the other side at this point in time, it would be like premature. So trying to maintain, like, I guess some equalness between both, like Lance and his chain of command, and then you know waiting for the actual court martial to be more specific on the situations, because he does leave out like a lot of specific details which are important on like the context of what's actually going on with Lance Castle. But like I said, Lance has 300 plus recordings of what's been going on. So there's no oh, I said this, he said that, and that you can't get somebody else to be on your side and say Lance said this, when all he has to do is pull up a recording and be like, really, I didn't say that, like, check this recording out, right? There is a situation where he goes into the office and whoever says like, oh, Lance like tapped his pen a bunch of times on the desk and like clicked it a bunch of times and was like staring at me and blah blah blah. But on the recording, you can't hear any pen taps. You can't hear any pen clicks. So who's like, right? And that's like being disrespectful. So if like, if you're in the military and you're, E4 and you're talking to a colonel and you're like upset, like clicking your pen around, like that's obviously disrespectful. So that's what they're trying to make it out to be. But in the recording, that doesn't happen, right? But not to mention, like, that colonel's there and there's like a first sergeant and somebody else, and nobody is saying he didn't click a pen. You see what I mean? So that's the kind of stuff that's going on with this court martial.
Yep, he's a prisoner. It's basically like I mentioned before. Lance Castle is probably the example of the worst possible scenario that any of us could have faced with refusing the COVID vaccine. And someone like John Frankman, I don't want to, someone like me too, might as well throw me in there as well. Some of the officers, they really got it off easy when refusing the COVID vaccine. Yes, we still got kicked out. Yes, we still have to go through the BS, but none of us are like Lance Castle. Because Lance Castle is still in pretrial confinement, and the COVID shot basically got removed in the beginning of 2022, and it's 2025 now. But they can't get him on the COVID shot, and they got to get him on these other 4 charges. Yeah, just let me know when you'd like me to read the COVID crimes and court martial of 24 March 2025. I think
Yeah,
we're still waiting on some people, I guess.
yeah, I'd like to get started here in a minute. The only thing I want to say is like there are other soldiers that are still being retaliated on. Like it's not like they said no to the COVID vaccine. They put a religious exemption in, whatever. But like they were like denied promotions, right? And then if you don't hit a certain rank at a certain time, the army can, like, and I'm only speaking for the army because that's what I was in, but they can push you out. They can kick you out. Oh, you didn't make sergeant, in 3 years. And I'm just making up numbers, obviously, but you didn't make sergeant in 3 years. We have to kick you out, because they're basically saying like you're not doing anything to like get better. You're just staying stagnant where you are. So we don't need you, right? We need somebody else to want to be an NCO, right? Or to want to be a staff sergeant or a sergeant first class. Like, you're not doing anything, right? So they'll kick those individuals out, and there's a certain time frame on those. I don't know exactly what they are. Um, but that's what they were doing. So if you said no, I don't want to get the vaccine, um, they would hold a grudge on you, and then they would just be like, oh well, I don't want to promote this guy because of this or because of that, and then he wouldn't get promoted, or he wouldn't be, even thought of for promotion, or they'd give him some sort of negative counseling or hold a grudge against him. Because if you give your leadership like a hard time, they may or may not like hold a grudge against you and start giving you a hard time, right? Like, he didn't want to take the vaccine and he gave me a shitload of problems for like 6, 7 months, and So like he's a horrible soldier and you just got this problem against these individuals. Well, you're affecting their careers. Like it might be like a great, outstanding, awesome soldier. You just don't know that because you got a grudge against this vaccine garbage, and you're actually stopping him from getting, sent to the promotion board, which in return is going to end up kicking that soldier out after a while. So now they're getting kicked out over not being promoted due to the vaccine, but they can't do anything about it because it doesn't look like it's due to the vaccine because, it's all covered up. It's all pushed aside. But that's what they're doing. So they're still hurting like other soldiers. So it's not too far off to say that these individuals are still holding grudges against Lance for not doing the vaccine and for being like, aggressive, and non-compliant for the vaccine, which made them like want to be like, well, okay, well then we're going to falsify this charge, or we're going to give you a bad like annual like report, or you're not going to be able to go to the promotion board, which by the way, all those things did happen. um but yeah I just want to say that it's not too far off that other soldiers were kicked out, you know for not taking the vaccine, but on paper it looks like it was for other reasons. So, and that stuff's still going on nowadays. So, but yeah, whenever you're ready, man, I'm ready to kick it off, and we're ready to do this, man.
All right, we got Derrick and we have Legacy. Um, well, we can start right now if you want. Let's do it. I just really hope they make a movie out of this. Just like um, what was the movie called with Tom Cruise and the Code Red? A Few Good Men. I think that's what it was called.
I don't know, man. I try not to watch too many movies, but yeah. So
So
I'll hand it off to
I'll hand it
Scott,
off to
and then
Scott.
Scott will give it to Derek, and then Derek will just hand it back off to me, because I'll cover down for Sean, which is fine, and then I'll give it back to you after that, Lucas.
All right. Make the title list: Senior Airman Lance Castle after refusing the COVID vaccine. All right. So Senior Lance Castle, aka the soldier that was in the cell extraction video, and I believe that video actually got almost 7 million views. And like I said, the Twitter note on it said it's not because of the vaccine. Well, it was the vaccine that got him in trouble to get in there in the first place. Where I believe it was I don't want to say the number. I think it was 5 or 6 other airmen were contemplating going in there and basically roughing him up, and they eventually ended up doing that. They charged his cell and they threw him on the ground and kept saying stop resisting, and that basically, you know, gave him fractures, and it's all because he didn't want to take the COVID vaccine. So it all starts on the 24th of August 2021 when General Austin, the previous Secretary of Defense, came out with the COVID vaccine mandate. And at a base stationed in the Clovis, New Mexico, called Cannon Air Force Base, Lance Castle was a COVID vaccine refusal, and doing so, he was targeted by his entire chain of command for being the only one who challenged the system. Instead of folding or taking a knee, Senior Lance Castle doubled down. He looked to God and found light at the end of the tunnel. He became a born again Christian and would not back down in the face of corruption and evil. Most people know Lance Castle as the soldier that was in the cell extraction video, as in the title. Yes, that is Lance, but his journey is so much more. To this day, he is in pretrial confinement at Joint Base Charleston, South Carolina, awaiting his second court martial scheduled for the 24th of March, 2025. So it's coming up. We are here today to discuss Lance's prior convictions and his current state of affairs. We are here to show support and to shed light on the corruption of the system. Not everyone can agree on this contentious subject. However, one thing we can all agree on: if the illegal and lawful COVID vaccine mandate never would have been presented itself, then Lance and others would have not been placed in these types of precarious situations. Life as we know it would be much different. So, yeah, I truly believe that Lance Castle was put here for a reason, and it's a fight that he's in. The four offenses charges uh, were Article 86, 89, 91, and 92, and that is absent without leave, disrespecting of a superior officer, disrespecting superior non-commissioned officer, this is on the list side, and failure to obey a lawful order. They always got to put that in there. You failed to obey my lawful order. Well, I mean, is it a lawful order? Is it lawful, essentially? Can it be challenged in a court of law? That's what's going on right now. I don't know if you want me to read the charge sheet, charges and specifications. I like the UCMJ violation, Article 91, 92. I don't know if you want me to read all that in
Yeah, I know.
specific detail, but
No, I don't think you need to right now. I think we can kind of push through that.
okay, that's all I got so far. Unless you want me to read anything else in particular.
No, I'll take over. So, yeah. So what Lucas kind of had just said for the charges were his current charges for his second court martial. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna kind of recap his first court martial, because you have to understand like what this individual went through and what he's dealing with right now are combined. They're together. Like if the COVID vaccine was never mandated, Lance Castle would never be where he is right now. Just period. So yeah, so like I said, what Lucas just went over was his current charges. Well, we're gonna recap his prior charges, kind of what he went through, like the course of it, what led to it, and then we'll give some commentary on whatever individual thoughts are. So what I want to do is start with General Austin's mandate, um, August of 21. But so Lance Castle was a vaccine refuser. He put in his religious accommodation. So initially, like right off the bat, right, he was assigned to he was assigned to the 27 SOLRS as a vaccine refusal in Cannon Air Force Base, Clovis, New Mexico. So basically, after he put in his refusal of the vaccine, he was reassigned in September of 21 to 26 STS, right? And from September to December, he stayed there. And then for whatever reason, they sent him back uh, to the 27 SORS. So they sent him away, then they brought him back, um, which I believe was kind of under the same unit, just in a different like section, basically, is how I understand it. So Lance, he decides, hey, I'm gonna take leave because he has a religious exemption like put in, right? And months go by, nobody's telling him like if it was denied or whatever. So he's like, well, I'm just gonna take leave because he went back to his old unit. He's like, I'm gonna put this leave in, and basically the leave was like from Monday to Friday, Monday to Friday, Monday to Friday, stuff like that. So he takes leave from January and all of February of 2022, waiting for his decision for his RA. So during January of 2022, there's a EPR, which is your enlisted performance report, right? And what they did was they gave Lance a 2 out of 4. And from my understanding, a 2 is pretty bad. And if you get a 2, you kind of need an explanation of, hey, why did I get a 2? So basically, they said, the unit you were at said you were, not coming to work and you're doing whatever, like basically not doing what you're supposed to be doing. So what Lance did was he went back to his old unit and he talked to them and he told them what was going on. And his old unit said, hey, you were perfectly fine. Everything was good. I don't know why you're getting it too. And Lance actually recorded that conversation. So Lance goes back to his current unit and says, hey, they said I was perfectly fine. Nothing was going on. So what's the reason? And so what the chain of command did was they were kind of in this like predicament. So they were like, okay, well, so they raised his fucking his rating up, right, from a 2. I don't remember if it's probably a 3, but just off the top of my head, I don't remember. But so they raised his rating up, right? So he didn't actually have to play that recording for anybody. They just raised it up, like, whatever, man, you got us, right? So they raised it. So that was done, right? So that was like the first like initial like, hey, we're gonna poke the bear a little bit and see what you do, which kind of failed. So right, and then in March 3rd, 2022, his religious exemption was denied, right? Which that's no surprise. Like if you were in the military, you put a religious exemption in, it freaking got denied. Like nobody's went through. Okay, unless you were like on your way out of retirement or like like special situations, like, but like I would say 99.9% of individuals religious exemptions did not go through. I know a chaplain whose religious exemption, they weren't even going to deal with that because he's a chaplain, so he doesn't have a religious exemption. That doesn't exist. But anyways, so we move on to he received an order on March 2022 after his religious exemption was denied to take the COVID vaccine, right? And then so he received a letter of reprimand for that order because he didn't take the vaccine, right, on the 18th of April. He received another order as well, and we'll back it up a little bit, March 9th, 2022, right, to receive the COVID vaccine. Okay, another order. So he received another letter of reprimand on 9 May 2022 because he didn't take that vaccine. So from my understanding, and I'm not 100% correct. I might get a few things wrong here and there, but I've been tracking this situation for a while. So he got 2 letter of reprimands. It may be one. That's kind of weird to me. And I had to ask Lance personally, but that's not possible at this moment in time. So he got a letter of reprimand for not taking the vaccine. Okay, so 13 June 2022, okay, there was a notification basically of a board hearing of discharge for Lance, like saying, hey, this is a notification, we're going to discharge you from the Air Force, right? Because you're not complying, with this lawful order, even though we all know it's unlawful. So then we move on to July 2022, right? He gets a letter of counseling, okay? And this LOC, okay, is failed to sign into a SAPR class. Now, what Lance did was he went to a SAPR class. He did not sign in. That is correct. But what he did was he took a picture of himself in that class and he sent the picture to his leadership showing that he was in the class. He just failed to actually sign the documentation, right? Whatever. That's a rookie mistake. So he was in the class, he just didn't actually sign in, but he still got a letter of counseling for not signing in. So they're already out to get him. I mean, I don't know. I have a bunch of leadership experience. Like I said, 17 years, 10 months in the military. Like I was on my way to being a first sergeant. But anyways, if somebody sent you a picture of being in a class that you didn't sign in, but you were in, like, you're not going to get a letter of counseling. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to waste my time doing that. There's no reason for it. So that's one thing they did. All right, December 2022. All right, they got a letter of reprimand. All right, so he supervisor missing a 12-minute work suspense. Now the 12-minute work suspense was the supervisor told Lance, and this is coming from Lance himself, to sign his EPR, so his annual report. Right, you got to sign it saying, yeah, whatever, I agree with it. So from Lance's words, and I have no proof on this, I'm just taking Lance's word from it. He said that he was unable to log into the computer because of whatever internet connection or whatever was going on. He couldn't actually log in and sign it. But he missed it by 12 minutes. So he was having issues for 12 minutes. So they actually wrote him up for that, which as a leader, again, like I find ridiculous. Like if my sergeant didn't sign his annual report, I'm not gonna freaking sit there and write him a counseling statement, right? I'm going to be like, hey, what's going on? Oh, I can't sign in. Okay, don't worry, man. We'll do it tomorrow, right? Because I think you have like 30 days after the fact, right, to get it signed. So after like the due date, you have 30 days. Okay, we'll do it in the morning. Go home. Like, whatever, dude. So you wrote him up for that. So you're actually trying to find stuff wrong with this soldier to pick on him to do things. Okay, I get it. No problem. So then there's a situation where, Lance and his leader, he texts his NCO, IC, his non-commissioned officer in charge. It was December 2022. He texted him and he called him silly. Okay. And I had a conversation with Lance already about this. And I was like, look, man, if you call me silly on a text message, you're going to get a fucking phone call and I'm going to have a conversation with you because you're not going to do that shit to me. Okay, cool. What happened with this situation is he called his leadership silly, and his leader, his first line supervisor, decided to ignore it and didn't do anything about it at all. What kind of piece of shit is that? And I'm just saying, like, that's fucking whatever. I'm not gonna get upset about it, but that is like you're allowing that to happen. You're not stopping it when it happened, right? And what you did was, right, you wrote him a letter of counseling. You didn't say, hey, man, don't talk to me that way. I don't appreciate it. I'm your supervisor. You're going to respect me. And if you have a problem, we can deal with this right now. No, you just wrote him a LOC and you ignored the whole entire situation. Scumbag, right? Whatever. All right, moving on. Let's see. Notification of non-recommendation for promotion testing. So that's for 2023 for E6 promotion cycle, right? Now, because he went through all those things, his leadership decided, hey, you got an X amount of LORs, you got an X amount of LOCs. We're not recommending you for promotion to E6, right? And what they actually did was they took his rank away because of that silly comment right there. They gave him a UCMJ and they took his rank away. But they're not going to send him to the promotion board. And what happened was, we're talking about 2023 now for promotion. And from my understanding, all that COVID stuff was done with. And so his records were supposed to be scrubbed of any COVID stuff. So if you got a letter of reprimand, for not receiving COVID, that's supposed to go away. But they kind of held that against him. And so they didn't send him to the promotion board. So they're holding this soldier back from promotion because, one, of the COVID stuff, two, because his first line supervisor, I I don't want to talk too bad about this individual, but he couldn't, like, hey, don't call me silly. Like, we're trying to be professional here. Like, don't do that shit to me, right? But whatever, man. Moving on. Okay, and then there's so Scott Lauterbach is going to cover some of this next stuff, right? But it's 06 January 2023, the 27 SOW First Sergeant distribution list. It's an actual email that says there's no approved COVID-19 vaccine on that post. He'll kind of talk about that a little bit. And then initiated date 15 January 2023 is reportable information for security clearance notifications. So basically, Scott's going to cover this as well, but they're attacking Lance and like trying to take his security clearance away from him by, calling him certain things, which I'm going to hand it over to Scott right now and let him like kind of talk about those specific things because I talked enough. So, all right, Scott, are you ready?
Yep, I got it. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Yep. So I'm basically I dropped everything in the chat from everything that was conducted on the Forgotten Soldiers podcast from episode 48 to 51. And then there was another episode 73, which is a breakdown of the 8-hour podcast we conducted with Lance Castle. Just to touch on a couple things that's also in the chat is a breakdown basically of the different scenarios that had come up of 15 January. This is basically retaliation against him. I think it, and from my opinion, and this is the information that was given to us from Lance, but I believe it straws from the email that's in the chat from the first sergeant and to the 27th SOW first sergeant and to the other first sergeants within the command and the commander's endorsement of a COVID vaccine religious accommodation request dated January 6th on Friday, 2023. So with that, it basically reads, I'll just go into it, and this is, I believe, was a pivotal moment for the reasons of his, I would say, the attack on him. It basically reads, sir, here's the process of religious accommodation. I'm also including the vaccination order. Pay attention to paragraph 3 where it says with full licensure approval from the FDA. That's the part of the letter the U.S. Air Force messed up as it refers to FDA approved Comirnaty and some very specific lot numbers of the Pfizer that have never been available at Canon. I recommend changing the verbiage to with approval from the FDA. That way it covers the EUA, which is the experimental youth authorization vaccines as well. And there you also have the master sergeant that signed off on it or sent the email with the comms numbers there. I firmly believe that this was the main reason. I think that they sent it to him accidentally. And my firm belief is that they retaliated against him. With that, they had come up and made up allegations that he was an insider threat. They made up indications that he was a threat to them and their well-being, in which they were all false and made up. Due to the fact that he refused the COVID bioweapon, he was also removed of the security clearance. And also, it shows that he was also suspended from classified information. Again, they retaliated against him unconditionally with Article 15s. It also states here and in the interviews that 26 January of 2023, they issued the Article 15. The charge 1 was Article 86. The charge number 2 is Article 91, and loss of rank and 2 months worth of pay. This is what Lance Castle has gone through, but this is throughout the DOD. This has happened for the past 4 years and ongoing now. There was a SecDef memo that was put out, but nothing has been done since. And on top of all that, you also have the flu vaccines that they are also going up against right now as well. So it's not just the COVID scenario for Lance Castle. It's also going to be ongoing for other military members of flu and probably any other so-called vaccinations that are actually bioweapons. I definitely urge everyone that listens to this X Space to look at the ingredients that these individuals want to inject into your body, and remind yourself and ask yourself this question: do I want to become a statistic? Thank you so much. And I'd like to pass it on to Derrick, who's going to go ahead and do his part in this. Thank you so much.
Is Eric up to speak next?
Hey, can you hear me? If Derrick's not gonna jump on, he might have some technical issues.
Damn. Derrick always has these technical issues. They must be targeting him.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I'm sorry, I hit the wrong button. I logged off. But yeah, if Derek's having some technical issues, I could fill in for a little bit. I'm sure if he has any side comments, he can just fill those in, later. So I'll probably take it from here for a while. I got a couple things to cover. I'm covering down for Derrick, unless he can sign in here soon, and then I'll cover in for Sean as well. Like I said, I've been involved in this for a while, so I hope I'm tracking what I think I'm tracking, but we'll go through it. And then again, all this stuff is covered, extensively in the Forgotten Soldiers podcast. I think Scott might have put some of that podcast in the comments. So I think it was 73. I did the remaster, so I took like 8 hours of podcast and combined it into like less than 2 hours. So it's just like information after information just coming at you. Anyway, so this kind of goes into Lance Castle's arrest. He was arrested 10 April 2023, and we're talking about his first arrest. Okay, so he was actually going on to post. So his commander, and all this is in the podcast, his commander scheduled a TTM, which is like a mental health like type appointment for Lance Castle. But if you go a few days prior to that TTM, there's text messages which were actually obtained legally through the court system. Is it off? Okay. Uh, can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you do have me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Did you?
we're listening, man.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So, all right. Well, 1 second. Let me get back to my notes. So, anyways, I kind of slipped on where I was, but okay. So yeah, a few days prior to his arrest, there's text messages that were obtained legally through the court system. But basically, those text messages are text messages of his leadership saying, "Hey, can we arrest this guy? Can we send a bolo out for his arrest and get him arrested?" And they're like, "Well, I don't know if we're there yet. Whatever, blah blah." So they set up this TTM, which is a mental health appointment. So he has to actually go on post to this mental health appointment. So his stance is like I don't want to go to work. I don't want to go on post. I don't want to deal with you people. Because they've been falsifying charges and setting them up and doing silly and all that other stuff. So basically, he agrees to go to the TTM and he gets ready to go on post. And what they do is they arrest him at the gate. Okay, so he gets arrested, and now in his own words, and you can look at the podcast, but he basically says they don't read my charges, right? So they don't tell him what he's being arrested for. They don't read his Miranda rights. They don't give him his charges until from memory, it's like 8 hours later, right? They actually tell him his charges. So whatever. So he gets arrested, right? He gets placed in pretrial confinement. So 10 April 2023. Uh, Probable cause determination from Barry D. Roach, right? So Colonel Roach, right? Which later on we'll find out after his court martial is done with, Colonel Roach is the same individual that is working in the same building that they send him back to after the court martial's over, and he doesn't want to go in there and see Colonel Roach anymore. So that's one of those reasons. We covered that kind of in the beginning, but so So now he's in pretrial confinement on 10 April, right? The same day on 10 April, right, they do a strip search. And what these individuals do is they're trying to maintain like dominance, right? We're in charge, you're not. So basically, they took Lance, right? What they did was they handcuffed him to a chair, right? So his hands are handcuffed to a chair, his feet are handcuffed to a chair, and what they're doing is they're stripping him down naked, right? So they take all his clothes off. He's butt naked, right? If you can imagine, he's sitting in this chair. He's handcuffed, right? And it's basically making like, hey, like you're here, you're arrested, like we own you. Like they're putting their foot down. They're basically stating their dominance over Lance Castle, right? So, and this is interesting because in this situation, kind of goes into the court martial a little bit. Um, Lance Castle, he's kind of like, I guess they use the word flailing, like he's like swinging around a little bit because he's like, what's going on? Like, I'm trying to get out of this. So he's like kind of swinging a little bit. But one of the security guards, he has this knee issue, and this will come up later, but his knee actually dislocates and he falls on the ground. Right. So they got Lance Castle in this chair. They're stripping him butt naked. Lance is kind of flowing around a little bit. The security guard falls on the ground because his knee dislocates. And that's actually a charge that they charge him with later on, right, in the court martial. And I'll get to that later on. But I just wanted to bring that up. And so that goes into 11 April, which is the very next day, right? So the very next day, and here's the thing. Lance Castle has like, all these medical issues, so mental health, whatever, blah, blah. He's on a bunch of medications, right? So he goes in and he basically like he's cut off from his medications. Okay, so he's laying in this jail cell. He has nothing. He's laying there. Like the lighting up above is like really bright, so he has a headache. He has whatever. So he basically said like, hey, I'm covering my face up because the light's so bright and my head hurts. I have a headache and I feel like crap. And so they're basically considering that as being non-compliant. So these individuals are like, hey, you're being non-compliant. You need to get up. Like, you can't lay there. You can't cover your face. Get up. And, you feel like shit. You're covering your face up. You got a headache. Like, whatever. So they kind of organize the cell extraction. Okay. So the individuals that did the cell extraction were not the individuals trained to do a cell extraction. Okay. I don't know if everybody wasn't trained or if they're just half of them weren't trained or whatever, but that cell extraction was illegally done. Okay. They decided to do a cell extraction because he was laying down with a pillow over his face. That was it. There's no other reason. Right. So the individual in charge went to the security forces around the area to get individuals to come on his team and do a cell extraction. So those individuals were not trained to do a cell extraction. They have no experience in cell extractions, so they shouldn't have done a cell extraction, right? And the entire cell extraction, according to regulation, is supposed to be recorded. So the pre-brief, the cell extraction, and then I guess after the cell extraction is supposed to be recorded. But what they did not do was the pre-brief, right? They never recorded the pre-brief, so nobody knows what they were told. And those individuals that did the cell extraction, like I said, I don't know if it was all of them or half of them or what, but they weren't all trained on it. So the only training they got was the brief, right? So they actually went in, right? And Lance Castle received injuries from that cell extraction. He had to get surgery. I think it was shoulder surgery and have convalescent leave and all that stuff because that cell extraction messes shoulder up. Right, he got hit in the face and some damage, I think, to his calf or his knee or something as well. That's all in the podcast as well. But he got a charge. His command team charged him because as he was struggling to breathe when he had like a 200+ pound individual who wasn't even trained in cell extraction is laying on top of him, cutting off Lance's air circulation. Lance is trying to breathe and he pops him in the face, whether it was purposely or accidentally. I honestly have no idea because I'm not Lance, but he got popped in the face, right? And so the chain of command, did an assault charge on Lance because he hit the individual in the face, right? And I think he like messed up his nose or whatever, man. But anyways, he hit the guy in the face, but the guy shouldn't have been there in the first place. So let's just get that straight. But that's another charge that was put on Lance during this whole process. So that covers the arrest, the day of the arrest, being naked, put in a chair, and being charged for dislocating a soldier's kneecap. And then the next day with the cell extraction, right, that shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? And then he spent 66 days pre-trial confinement, missed the birth of his child, right, because they want him to stay in pre-trial confinement. And then again, I'm covering down for Sean as well, so I'm going to go ahead and speak for Sean. But we're going to cover the court-martial charges. I'm going to try and do this really swiftly and brief, so we can move on. But charge 1 was desertion, right? So they tried to get him for a desertion charge. It was from 1 March to 10 April 2023. And so here's the thing. On 1 March, right, which is the beginning of the desertion charge, to 10 March, right, that's 10 days in, he was on approved leave. So how are you going to charge someone for desertion when you're the commander and you sign them a leave form and saying, oh, you're good, don't worry about it, right? But they actually filed a charge for that, and that's the incompetency of this chain of command. So as well, he was given an order on post on 31 March. So he wasn't on desertion means like, I'm never going back, I quit, I'm done, like you're never going to see me again. He was asked to come on post to give an order. He came on post on 31 March, given an order by Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez. So how are you desertion? How is that considered desertion if you're on post talking to your commander? Doesn't make sense, but he was charged. And I believe that was recorded as well. He went to a TTM appointment that was scheduled on 10 April, which we all know, right? That's where he got arrested. So then charge 2 was disrespect toward Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez, calling him a domestic threat. So he called him a domestic threat. So this is where this is probably the most important one, right? Because you have to understand, right? Colonel Vasquez said you called me a domestic threat, right? And that's a charge. Lance Castle recorded that conversation. So when that conversation came up in court, right? He played that recording and nowhere was a domestic threat said. So that was a falsified charge made up by Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez, his commander. Never happened. And without that recording, he would have been found guilty, period. That's it. That's the justice system. That's it. And so then there's let me see, called domestic threat, boom, boom, Colonel Vasquez. Okay, so Master Sergeant Carey was his like first sergeant, like first line supervisor. And Master Sergeant Carey like doubled down and was like, hey, yeah, he called him a domestic threat. It wasn't in that recording when they sat down and talked to each other. It was later on when he sent him an email. It was in the email. So what happened was they went through the email. They had Master Sergeant Carey read off the email. He said, hey, so what did you not disagree with? And he's trying to find this word, domestic threat. Couldn't find it because it didn't happen. It was made up. It was fabricated. And that is exactly what they've been doing. So that was proven in court. So these individuals are sitting on the stand, lying on the stand, and getting away with whatever they want. And that's charge 2. And that's why he won his second charge. And that's why he won his first charge. And then we go into the third charge. So violating an order to go to work. Right? So this one's interesting. So you have Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez, which is his commander, right? Enrique Vasquez. And basically, the legal team says, hey, Lance Castle has an issue with his first line supervisor, Master Sergeant Carey. And so that's why he's not going to work. So Colonel Vasquez says, oh, well, we changed his supervisor to a different supervisor so he can go to work. Problem solved, right? It sounds good. Well, the lawyer asked, well, did you tell, Lance Castle that his supervisor was changed and didn't come to work? He said no, right? So they changed his supervisor, but never told Lance Castle, hey, we changed your supervisor. It's now this person. You can get away from that guy that's like, making shit up, trying to get you for whatever. So, but no one told him. So the commander didn't tell him, right? So then they go to Captain Liam, ask him the same question, right? Hey, did you tell Lance Castle his supervisor was changed? He says no. I didn't tell him. I thought somebody else would do it, basically. Okay, cool, got it. So the guy that doesn't want to go to work because his supervisor is a certain person, you change it, but you don't tell the individual, so he's not going to come back to work, obviously. So then they go to Master Sergeant Carey. Master Sergeant Carey is the supervisor that Lance Castle didn't want to be around. And so when the lawyer says, hey, how do you know Lance Castle? He says, oh, I was his supervisor. And then get this, he says, I still am his supervisor. So Master Sergeant Carey just said, I am currently his supervisor under oath. So Lieutenant Colonel Vasquez, Captain Liam just lied and said we changed his supervisor. Right? Master Sergeant Carey said, I'm still his supervisor. So either who's lying? One of them are lying. That's not the truth. So under oath, somebody's lying. Right? There's some lies going on there. And that's why he won that charge. Okay? And then you have insubordination. Right? So, and this one is stupid. Like, there was a non-judicial punishment for him calling his supervisor silly, which I already talked about that earlier. But so he already got punished for this, right? He got his rank taken and he got some pay taken away from him. But what they tried to do was charge him in the court martial, which is like double jeopardy. You can't charge somebody twice for the same crime. But that's what they tried to do, and they got caught. So that didn't fly, right? And then they tried to do the assault, all right, during the strip search, which I talked about, right? Lance Castle was naked, sitting on a chair, handcuffed, couldn't move, right? And I think what he said is, if I recall correctly, you can go back to the podcast, but he said his arm was free or his leg was free, and he was kind of like welling around, like trying to get loose or whatever, like, and the security guard or whoever was, trying to, get him butt naked and handcuff him for whatever reason, like his kneecap dislocated. So they questioned this individual and they said, hey, did Lance Castle, like, would you be surprised if he had a charge on him that basically said he assaulted you and dislocated your kneecap? And he said, yes. And then they said, why? Why would you be surprised about that? And he said, well, because he didn't touch me, right? So he didn't even touch him. So they charged Lance Castle for dislocating a soldier's knee who he didn't even touch, and the soldier said he didn't even touch me. So it's just a quick charge that the chain of command said, hey, I'm just going to do this charge. They didn't investigate. They didn't ask anybody. They just did a charge, hoping it'd go through, and they failed, right? And then the last one, right, charge 5, right, specification number 2 is the during the cell extraction, like it was like a 215 or 30 pound like freaking airman that like laid on top of him and like cut his oxygen off, and Lance like moved his arm and smacked the dude in the face. Like that was the charge. It was assault, right? You sent 7 dudes in there, and if I recall correctly, it was 7. It might have been 5, but I'll just say 7. So 7 guys go in there, jump your ass, and you hit one in the face, whether it was accidentally or purposely, and you're getting a fucking charge for it when you didn't even do anything wrong other than put a pillow over your face because you have a headache and the light's fucking bothering you. Get out of here, man. But that dude wasn't even authorized to do that cell extraction. They didn't even do it correctly. They didn't record the whole thing. He had no training in doing it, and he got popped in the face. So good for him, right? So that charge didn't stick either. And that was the 5 charges, right? And then he goes on to be arrested. And I think Lucas will talk a little bit about this. If not, I can talk about it. But he was arrested again on 19 July 2024, pretrial confinement again. So this is the thing. He basically stated, like, I want to take you to trial and have a court martial so I can prove to everybody that you guys are being corrupt and doing the wrong thing. He sent emails out, he sent text messages out, and he has all this shit anyways, and probably recordings as well, saying the same thing. But he's in pretrial confinement because they think he's not going to make his court martial. How stupid is that? And so 4 charges, 9 counts, 37 specifications is where I'm at. And then I'll hand it back over to Lucas.
Yeah, very interesting developments. I mean, in detail. I would like to see what Rayman has to say because he always listens. He's joined every X Space that I know of so far, and he has really good comments. And I believe he was also an officer. He messaged me on the side. I don't know if his mic works though, but yeah, I mean, hopefully, we tend to think that Lance Castle is innocent, and then most of the cases that they try are for actual criminals, actually breaking the law. And Lance is a innocent man, and he's served his country. He's still serving his country. He's locked up right now again as we speak, and he's getting ready for that court martial that John and Scott are going to attend, and Ted too. They're going to walk in there with their slacks and attend Lance Castle's court martial for a second time. And John knows the whole story. So does Scott. So do I. Everyone else knows it now. So if the outcome is corrupt, then at least we have some testimony. But I have faith that Lance Castle's going to finally make it out. Because it's crazy to think about that the mandate stopped in 2022. And guess what? People are still being afflicted by that, just like Lance Castle is. And I guess he's just not popular enough for the masses to even care. We talk about the reinstatement with the COVID vaccine, like, yeah, the troops can come back, but there's still troops being reprimanded till this day. And some of them, like Lance, are locked up, but we want to reinstate the troops again. But maybe those reinstated troops, they can help out Lance. Maybe they can make the situation better, but it's not many of them. And are those reinstated troops going to turn on Lance Castles? I hope not. But apparently the same people are still in charge that mandated the COVID vaccine. They're just following orders. So we pray for Lance Castle, one of the very few that are still being reprimanded for the COVID vaccine. They just got him on other stuff. And I understand the micromanagement. If they really don't like you, they can actually start making you do these minor infringements. They can tell you to go somewhere and do something, and if you don't show up on time, like, they can just make up some charges on you. And that's the way it works in the world, actually, not just in the military. But we're definitely going to see the outcome. It's very exciting to see. You know, if he has a win, this could potentially go very popular, and you might get some millions of views on it. Just to show that you can win against the COVID vaccine even 3 years after. And yes, we're reinstating the troops too, but yes, we're trying to correct the injustices of history. So hopefully it gains some good attention. Does anyone else have some stuff to add?
Yeah, Lucas. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions or anything. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to ask any questions. I mean, I'll answer what I can. I have a few contacts, and I'm kind of up to date on some of the situation that he's dealing with his new judge and his new charges and kind of what's going on now. And like I said, me and Scott and actually Derrick Wynn is and a couple other individuals. We got Eric and Johnson, James Johnson. We're all headed up to South Carolina, and we're actually going to meet up tomorrow, which is Sunday. And then we're going to link up tomorrow, and then we'll be at his court martial on Monday, Tuesday, and possibly Wednesday if it's still going on. We'll be there Wednesday, and then sadly, if it's still going on, we have to leave. But we're going to be there for 2 to 3 days and kind of see what's going on, and we'll send out some messages, maybe a few like quick clips of like kind of what's going on, and if anybody's actually interested. It seems like a dead story. I mean, we only got a few people on here, so I appreciate everybody on here, and maybe people will pass it around and actually listen to it if they're interested, which is awesome because the more people that know about Lance's situation and have an understanding for it, whether he's guilty or not, like they can kind of understand how corrupt the system is and how it's working. He seems very confident though, like super confident. And when I say he has 300 plus recordings, he has 300 plus recordings. That's not from me, that's from him. Like I'm just not making shit up. Like I'm not like I do like my 100% best not to make shit up. Like everything I say is like from him. And if you go to the podcast, like I said, I put I believe it was 10 hours of podcast in the under 2 hours, and everything is coming from his mouth, his words, and I'm not altering anything. And I got a little bit of contact so I can kind of get some information on what's going on. So again, everything I say is like coming from him and or stuff that he wrote that I'm reading. So that's where we are, and I think it's really important for people to understand that the situation is not over yet. It's still ongoing, and that's just the way it is. So if anybody has any questions or anything, like I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't, like I'll just straight up tell you I can't. Like I mean that's just the way it is. So, but I do appreciate you guys for showing up. Thank you.
Rain Man, how's it going? Can you hear us? I just want to, just compliment you, John, because with the Forgotten Soldiers podcast on Rumble, and every one of those soldiers, and especially Lance Castle, it's John sees them as if they're part of his platoon essentially, and Lance Castle's still serving, and yes, he's still locked up. Hopefully, not for much longer. And John sees it as these soldiers that they need help essentially. And I don't know if the metaphor of comparing Lance Castle to the movie Platoon at the end, Sergeant Elias, maybe that's Lance Castle. So hopefully he doesn't die, but he's a great sergeant. That's what I meant. He's got very good characteristics. In the Air Force, sadly, we all kind of know at this point, and I've got a little bit of experience. I went to college at Embry-Riddle. It's a aerospace, astrospace school. And yeah, a lot of the Air Force program was by far the biggest there. I guess even compared to some other schools, and highly competitive. But what they're doing at the Air Force is they're more into like the regulations and how you wear your uniform and all these like small policies, and they're all on the computers and they're checking their email every minute of the day. And yeah, they knew how to write up Lance Castle because they have nothing else better to do. Instead of training the actual troops in the Air Force, they're busy writing up people within their own units and kicking them out. That's what they do. And like John said, maybe they get some type of joy out of it, satisfaction, like, or maybe they're using it for blackmail, like John said too. And yeah, these leaders, and like I was saying before, a lot of the corruption breeds corruption, and a lot of these bases are so corrupt they make the headlines, and no one really wants to go there for a reason. Like if you got stationed at Fort Hood, a lot of people don't like that area. But maybe some of the units there are good. But I guarantee you, like, nothing's changed. You know, you actually have soldiers killed at Fort Hood by other soldiers. That's how corrupt it is. And it's like that on some other military bases as well. It gets violent out there. You know, they say we want the killers, we want the people that are willing to pull the trigger. Yeah, there is some of the military that's bloodthirsty. And yes, we got to redirect that towards the enemy, not our own troops. But a lot of these corrupt paper-pushing officers, that all they do is just write you up and throw in these words in these counseling forms, and they're really good at kicking you out and putting reprimands on your records. I mean, some of these officers, they're really good at doing that, and they take pride in it. You know, it's like, just like Vindman with Mark Bashaw in his court martial case. He was convicted, but then later found innocent. But the Vindman guy, I don't know if he was a general or a colonel, but he's got ties to Ukraine. And he said, yeah, we kicked out Mark Bashaw for not taking the COVID vaccine. This is a first in history. And he was bragging about it on Twitter. And yeah, these guys, they take pleasure in it. Like, if you don't follow my orders, like everything, if you don't want to take a vaccine, that means you're not willing to follow any of my orders. You're untrustworthy. Yeah, the vaccines it's like a litmus test, really. It's like, are you going to be able to comply? Yes or no? Take the vaccine, yes or no? And if you don't want that vaccine, for some reason, you're labeled untrustworthy. And if you're labeled untrustworthy, you're labeled as the enemy. And it's really sad hearing about soldiers till this day. Hundreds of them, if not thousands, are still being reprimanded or going to be kicked out or being kicked out as we speak for not taking a flu vaccine. That annual flu vaccine that has mRNA technology in it now, from Albert Bourla. He said that less than 2 years ago. Then it begs the question, what about all the other vaccines? Just like Derrick said, they're just going to integrate it into the platform. And yeah, sadly, more people, more soldiers are going to have health side effects. And we just keep rolling with the shots until one day all vaccines are optional. You know, we have to get to that point. And we've got the civilian side fighting for the vaccines too on Stop the Shots. I'm there almost every night after my gym session. I listen to the Stop the Shots podcast, and they got really intelligent people coming on there, and doctors and PhDs, and they're all breaking down the COVID vaccine, the population agenda, and what's actually happening in the world. And there's a little bit of a split of truth right there. And it kind of, there's one or two sides in that chat right there, which believe that the good guys are actually the bad guys. And that's the worst case scenario. But we all hope and pray that the COVID vaccine is still on the market. It's sad to say, but yes. And a doctor told me on Stop the Shots just a couple days ago that a quarter of all newborns still take the COVID vaccine. And I looked at the schedule the other day, and it's 7 vaccines, like right when you're a newborn. And one of them is the COVID vaccine, but it has a catcher on it. It says 1 plus or more boosters of COVID vaccine. So you can do 1 COVID vaccine, or you can go all the way up to like 3 or 5 on like a newborn. I don't know. I don't know how many boosters. I guess 11 exists these days. Who knows? We stopped counting boosters after like 3. After that, the mutations kept on mutating, and then they just stopped mutating. But the boosters never stopped. They kept producing more and more. So who knows what you're actually even getting? Like you're taking a vaccine. You can go down to Walmart or Walgreens right now, and there it is. There's a sign that says take a COVID-19 vaccine. That's what it says. 19. So you're taking a vaccine that was for a virus back in 2019, 6 years ago. And no one ever really talks about COVID anymore, other than the vaccine. But they're basically giving these to newborns at this point. And that's when the women in the Stop the Shots, the mothers, they get very, very angry when I bring that up. And they get very protective over their children and all the other newborns and babies. Women just love babies, regardless of what baby it is. So it really gets to them when you tell them that the COVID vaccine is still on the schedule for babies. And yes, like I said, week after week goes by. Yes, we gotta take care of the Fruit Loops. Stop eating Fruit Loops; it's bad for you. And the trannies in the military, they're being kicked out, just like the COVID vaccine refusals. But this time they get a severance paycheck. But the VA, and maybe you can ask Sonny, supposedly is getting rid of transgender surgery for veterans. But they won't get rid of that COVID vaccine, though. So you can go in there and request to get your sex change, and they'll tell you no, but they'll give you a COVID vaccine if you want it. So this is kind of reality we live in. And this is happening right now. And I know a lot of elderly people that took the COVID vaccine and passed away very suddenly. In their like 60s or 70s, they pretty much died off pretty quick. And that was my grandpa. And but he lived a very, very old life. He lived a good life too. And we all care for the family members, but at the end of the day, the military is still being poisoned. And the last time I checked, a lot of them don't know what to do, and they're scared to speak out. And then there's those that have fake vaccine cards. They want to join the fight, but they know it's not a winning game. So they just tell the medics just to make sure they're vaccinated in the system. Yep. And everyone's had problems with vaccines. In the military, it's like vaccine utopia. It's like they're just like vaxaholics, basically. They just love vaccines. And a lot of these troops, I've heard stories like Sean said, they can just give you a vaccine, and if they don't put it in the system, it's almost as if it never existed. You just took a vaccine that you probably didn't even know who made it and what's in it. And that happens all the time in the military. A lot of people get, especially basic training when you're getting in the military, they just start plucking you like 20 vaccines at once, and supposedly they all get checked off in your record. But that's like the entrance to it. You got to take a lot of vaccines. I don't know if that's still a requirement. A lot of people just don't really mind it, as long as it's not a COVID vaccine, right? So we all do hope and pray that the mRNA technology is not in all vaccines. You got to make sure that there's people believe it's in our food supply. And if that's the case, then there's no chance in fighting back. And we can just have these conversations while we just eat our mRNA beef and milk. And then maybe I can just die of a heart attack right now as I'm talking to you. Maybe that's going to be the case, but I like being optimistic. Lance Castle is going to win. The troops are going to come back to the military, and a whole nother, struggle is going to begin. It's like a never-ending struggle. There's always some type of fight going on in people's lives. And that's the fight of the soldiers. Fight of the soldiers that got kicked out of the military for not taking an experimental injection. Yeah. The real mandates. When that vaccine was mandated, the military got the mandate from Joe Biden himself. And Secretary Austin, with a stroke of his pen, signed off on thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of discharges to kick all those soldiers out of the military that wanted to fight for their country, but you forced their hand to take an experimental injection, and you didn't even provide them with a waiver or any type of consent. And yeah, that's definitely has to change. Yep. Rain Man, you got anything? Or Sonny?
Hey, Lucas. Yeah, if nobody has anything, can you hear me? Okay, yeah. Hey, if nobody has anything, we could probably wrap it up. But I just want to say, appreciate everybody for showing up, supporting Lance Castle. He's basically by himself. I mean, initially, if you were in the military, you understand that when you started this fight or you stood up against whatever was going on, you were by yourself. We got out, we got kicked out, we got whatever, but we kind of started finding each other and the same individuals that started standing up and fighting. And so, I'm all the way from El Paso, Texas, right, which is like the west side of Texas, like right next to New Mexico. But like I'm flying out to go see Lance Castle to show him that I'm supporting him because I believe like I don't care what the judge fucking says, honestly. Um, he's innocent. I understand that. He might have done some things like that people don't agree with, whether like military individuals like, oh, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't like we all would have done shit differently. I understand that. But, coming from, Lance's point of view, that I mean, if you watch the podcast I put together and you just watch the first 9 minutes, which covers his career, and you kind of get an idea of his mentality, right, and his drive, then you're going to understand immediately why he took the stance he did. And so, and it might not be you. You might not do those things, but you also wouldn't, um, be part of like, the career path he was taking, right? You're not going to join special forces or ranger school or like do these things, he's headed in a certain direction that you would never go into, right? Well, it's just a different mentality. Okay. So he just takes things a little more aggressively, right? But that's Lance Castle. And so, I believe 100%, and I think everybody can agree that if the mandate didn't happen, if this COVID corruption didn't happen, he would never be in this position. I would never be in this position. Scott would never be in this position. I would have been retired right now, enjoying the rest of my life, spending time with my children, which I don't have the fucking opportunity to because it was stripped from me. So I say, fuck those motherfuckers. Lance Castle can't even spend time with his child because he's in pretrial confinement, right? Scott's not enjoying his retirement. He's out here with me sitting in a freaking hotel room getting ready to drive to South Carolina because these fucking people did this shit. And that's just like mediocre shit. I'm just talking about bullshit. Like, think about the other thousands, tens of thousands of individuals that have to deal with all this shit, right? I got an individual I'm talking to who's fucking homeless right now, spending time in some VA fucking, oh, you're homeless, come stay the night over here bullshit, you know, not sure if he can go back home to his family or fucking he's going to stay where he's at and fucking hang out with a bunch of drug addict drunk fucks because like he got kicked out because he didn't make promotion in the military because he refused the vaccine. This is the fucking shit we're fucking dealing with. And, so yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to go on a rant, but this is what we're dealing with. And so I took some time out to schedule this. So I hope and I appreciate everybody shares this and actually listens to it. But, we're going to go see Lance Castle, and we're going to support him at least as much as we can for a few days. And we'll send updates, and we'll try and get the information out. And, I hope to God that, he has all the recordings, because these pieces of shit are going to fabricate charges and lie their ass off. And in court, the judge ain't going to fucking say shit because they didn't do it the first time. You can watch the damn podcast, right? I broke it up by chapters, so you can just skip to the court chapter and watch while they're saying themselves, and they're fucking lying while they're on the stand. They're under oath. They're fucking all lying. But they're cool. They're all good. They're getting their fucking retirements. They're serving still. They're pieces of shit in our fucking military. And we let this happen. It's fucking disgusting. And we're out here fucking scraping the fucking ground trying to get fucking by. You got fucking guys that can't even go back home and see their families. I got guys that fucking they're divorcing now because of this shit. But these motherfuckers get a fucking lie and falsify charges, get caught in court, and nothing fucking happens to them. We have all the documents. We have all the fucking proof. Like, I have documents. Scott has documents. Fucking, I know Sonny has documents because he fucking said it. He went in front of fucking Congress and said, hey, this is what the fuck's going on. They don't give a fuck. Nobody fucking cares. So we're gonna fucking. I hope this shit fucking people at least listen to it and understand what's going on. We're gonna push out the information and updates, and we're gonna keep doing this shit, and that's fucking what it is. So, but I do appreciate everybody for coming here, and I just want to thank you guys. If you guys have anything to say, go ahead and do what you gotta do. All right, thank you, Lucas.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, John. I just want to appreciate you again for keeping in the fight for it's almost 4 years now. And even after you got separated, you still wanted to get your voice out there in regards to the COVID vaccine, because someone has to do it, and you're the one chosen to do it. So it's no one better than you at this point. And it's the same thing with all of us in the military. It's a very difficult spot right now because it's in self-destruction mode. It's literally purging their own soldiers out of their own ranks, and they don't care. They don't even care about retention. They totally don't care. They just want to get rid of as many soldiers as they can until they're the last ones. Yep. So it's just the officers that get their pensions, and maybe a couple soldiers that willing to obey them. But yeah, the military. Yeah, that's what's so difficult, and that's a military coup in itself. A lot of the officers are on the same page, and I guess the enlisted are with them. But that's a macro level analysis, and every branch is different. Like I said, I was in the Army, so was John. In the Air Force, they do little things different. Yes, it's more well kept and more professional, but then you get these professional like backstabbers, and all they want to do is just screw you over for some reason. And they just take pride in it. They just love it when they get to screw over someone in the military, as as they're in charge. It's some type of like domination thing. And it goes back to, there's a lot of people that just don't like each other, and at any moment they'll just not be hesitant to screw you over. And maybe that actually probably exists elsewhere other than the military. But like I said, we all had to go through the whole military paperwork for the vaccine, and the military is still suffering, and hopefully one day we can get to repairing the damage that has been done. If anyone else wants to say anything, please do. Otherwise, the next X Space is going to be on the most likely post court martial of Lance Castle. So we'll get to know on the next space. We'll either be really excited and take that to the system, and you can do it, and hopefully it's not the other case. So stay tuned, and God bless everyone, including Lance Castle. Amen.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for holding this, Lucas. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.